welcome back to the channel. Today I am doing something called an extended review because the game that we're talking about today is called Marvel Champions. A game that so many people have been telling me to play for a very long time. So I'm doing an extended review today because I'm going to talk about every single hero, every single villain. I played this game not once, not twice. I was supposed to play it 3 times. And then 7 hours later, I played this game 12 times because I had to, right? I had to do a extensive review. So in order for me to do an extensive review, I guess I just had to play it again and again and again. It's so good. Spoiler alert, today is going to be a very, very fun review. I'm gonna make some nice dramatic B-roll over all the heroes. It's gonna be a fun day. So, Marvel Champions is an LCG, which is a living card game. It basically means that this game is ever evolving, so there are expansions being added to the base game constantly. You're playing as your favorite hero, either solo or cooperatively, balancing when to switch your hero form to deal damage to villains or to switch to your alter ego form in order to remove threats and recover. Ultimately, your goal is to defeat all stages of the villain before they either bring your health down to 0 or accomplish their own objectives. Here's a preface, I've only played this game solo, but I've played it 12 times and I've played through every single hero, every single villain, everything included in the game. First, I'm gonna give you a lightning quick overview about how the game plays in case you are new to Marvel Champions. And then I'm gonna tell you about each hero and each villain individually in case you're on the fence about the game, in case you wanna know a little bit more about each hero. And then I'm gonna wrap up this video by telling you the highlights of Marvel Champions along with a couple of things that I may not have liked, along with things that I think should have been improved as well. Today's going to be a seriously fun day, especially if you are a Marvel fan. Now, let us begin by telling you about how this game pretty much works. Here's a quick rundown. So you start every turn by looking at your character's hand size limit. In this case, T'Challa has a hand size of 6, so I draw up to 6 cards. And then here's your chance to do a mulligan, which is basically where you get to get rid of your cards. So I can get rid of these 2 cards in the meantime, and then draw 2 more to start off my turn. 1 and 2. From there, I'm gonna play cards, and then you play cards depending on how many resources are listed. So in this case, for Wakanda Forever, if I were to play this card, it costs 1 resource. And your resources are actually listed on the bottom left of each corner. There are a total of 4 different types of resources. You have your main hero, you have allies that you can then summon later on, you have event card upgrades for your heroes, and you also have energy cards that count as double resources. So you play cards to either upgrade your heroes or summon allies and of course pay their associated discard cost. And then your goal is to dish out damage to the villain. So in this case, if I were to attack with T'Challa, I would then switch form because his alter ego form is mostly for recovery and for search. If I were to switch forms, I then go over to Black Panther, and then now he can attack Rhino. So if I were to attack Rhino, I just switch him to his side, and then this becomes exhausted, and then 2 damage is dealt to Rhino. Villains have their own health point tracker, so Rhino starts off at 14, which is listed on the bottom of his card, and then from there, if I deal 2 damage, of course this is going to drop down to 12. At the end of my turn, I will then draw up to my hand size, so here's 3, 4, and 5, because the hero side usually has a smaller hand size. And then we switch on over to the villain side. When it's the villain's turn, they actually start off with something called a boost. So a card is gonna go face down for them. And then this is going to amplify either their attack, because if you're in your hero form, they're going to attack you. If you're in your alter ego form, then they're going to scheme, which is how they generate threats for their missions over here. So this boost card is going to amplify what's gonna be done. Rhino in this case is going to attack for 2, plus a boost card, which I can then flip over. And this shows a boost of 2. So which means he's going to attack for a total of 4 damage. Heroes have their own health point tracker. In this case, T'Challa has 11. So then I'm gonna drop down to 9. Now the villain is going to deal you an encounter card. So you draw this card and then you basically act on whatever is happening. So in this case, it is a treachery card. And it says when revealed, you are confused. If you're already confused, this card gains surge. So in this case, I would be confused, and there are actually status icons that you can use to put onto your character. So over here, if I'm confused, it's this purple one, and I'll stick that on Black Panther, which means it would be more difficult for me to get rid of his threat later on. Also, I forgot to mention that at the beginning of their villain turn, you would also put a threat icon, and they generate this threat every single turn. It's actually the first thing that happens on their turn. That is how the game works. So your goal is to ultimately reduce the villain's health down to 0, and then go through all their forms. There's expert mode, which actually adds on a 3rd form for them. And because these threat tokens accumulate every round, you also want to make sure that these don't reach the numbers listed on the top left of the card. So here you can see that it says 7. If it reaches 7, then the game is over. So there's a time limit included. Your mission, reduce the health to 0 and make sure that their scheme does not reach their limit. Now, let's go ahead and start off by talking about each of the heroes, starting first off with SpiderMan. Your neighborhood-friendly SpiderMan is somewhat of a glass cannon. He does have pretty low health compared to other heroes, but he is very agile. Spider-Man's attacks hit like a tank. For example, his swinging web kick hits for 8 damage. What does that mean? Let me give you a little context. His regular attack hits for 2 damage. Rhino's health is at 14 for his first form. 2 swinging web kicks and Rhino is done. That's how much damage Spider-Man does. He can also web up enemies and stun them, which in turn delays their attacks. Spider-Man also has tech upgrades that he can use to generate wild resources. He's also very maneuverable, and he can also use his spider sense to stop treachery cards, which are basically negative events. He can also perform backflips at 0 cost to completely dodge attacks in response to an enemy's turn. Spider-Man's ability lets you draw more cards in response to attacks, and his alter ego form is a scientist, which self-generates wild resources. If your playstyle is quick, if you like low-cost cards, if you like to just play cards back to back on the field, if you like to be very responsive to your enemy's attacks and moves overall, then you are going to love Spider-Man. Now, moving on to number 2, who is Captain Marvel. Now, she is capable of doing pretty steady damage, but she does have one attack called Energy Channel. For this card, she builds it up by putting more energy resources on there, and she can do a total of 10 damage when maxed out. If Captain Marvel goes Super Saiyan and uses a maxed out Energy Channel combined with a normal attack, she can take out Claw's first form in 1 turn. Just like that. That is how powerful Captain Marvel is. If you power up Captain Marvel with Flight and give her an aerial ability, her other abilities do power up as well, and then she can then reduce more threats. She actually has her own energy card, which when combined with Energy Channel produces 6 damage instantly. Captain Marvel's recovery, as expected, is pretty solid at 4 health, so she can recover 4 health when you switch her over to the Carol Danvers side. And she can also give you more cards if you're playing solo, but if you're playing cooperatively, she can give other players more cards as well. So more draw power to the team. Because she's so strong on her own, she only has one ally who is Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman confuses the villain, making it harder for them to generate threat. If you like powerhouse characters that kind of build up their insane amounts of damage, if you like characters that stand on their own and that just hit hard in general, then you will love Captain Marvel. Number 3, very similar to Captain Marvel, is SheHulk. She is my favorite character to play in the base game. My favorite characters in general, because I know you want to know. My favorite characters in general are Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and Moon Knight. So of course SheHulk is very out of that spectrum. She's very different from those 3. But in this game, she plays so amazingly well. I'm a very offensive, very aggressive player, and that playstyle matches very well with SheHulk. Here's why SheHulk is so fun to play as. Her recovery is better than Captain Marvel at 5 health. Jennifer Walters, who is her alter ego, she prevents 1 threat. That lets you focus on dishing out damage, and every time you switch to her SheHulk form, she automatically deals 2 damage to any enemy. So that helps you get rid of minions, drones, and just destroy the villain. Her cards center around massive combo plays. For example, she has this one card called 1-2 Punch. This lets you once again ready SheHulk. When you attack in this game, or defend, or remove threats, or recover, you have to place your hero sideways, and this is called Exhausted Form. You can only do this once per turn, and at the end of your turn, you can then ready your hero by turning them back up. 1-2 Punch lets you ready SheHulk again so she can attack, you play 1-2 Punch, and then she attacks again. That is 6 damage total from her just attacking normally. That's crazy. Now if she takes too much damage, you can actually utilize this other card called Gamma Slam. Now this can deal up to 15 damage, so the more damage you take, the stronger that SheHulk will get. SheHulk also has AoE attacks, which basically means area effect, so it's going to attack everyone with Ground Stomp. She removes threats very easily with Legal Practice, letting you discard cards to remove 1 threat per card. And my favorite card that she has is Split Personality, which lets you change forms and draw up to your hand size. Hero forms usually have a smaller hand limit than your alter ego forms, so I can attack with her SheHulk form, play Split Personality, flip to the other side, draw up to 6 cards, use my normal flip to change her back to SheHulk, deal 2 more instant damage, and then play all those brand new cards that I just got. Overall, if you like combos, if you like characters that hit with very strong attacks, characters that have amazing recovery, and that have she actually has the highest raw health pool in the entire base game, SheHulk is your go-to. I love how she can take care of threats with her alter ego form, and they can switch back and become very offensive. So it lets you focus on the offense while taking care of threats on the side. On top of that, I like SheHulk more than Captain Marvel in this game because she can deal damage without having to build it up like Captain Marvel does with her energy beam blast. SheHulk hits like a tank all the time. However, she's not as reactive as Captain Marvel is to villains. Okay, 2 more heroes and then villains, but how are you all liking the video so far? Tell me down in the comments below who is your favorite Marvel hero or just your favorite Marvel character in general. I also wanted to go through all these characters because it shows you really like how many different playstyles there are, and I love how inviting it is. It just gives so many options to so many different types of players. So that's why I wanted to go over each hero one by one. Now, let's continue on with Black Panther. The King of Wakanda plays very differently from everyone else that you've seen so far. Your goal for Black Panther is to quickly arm him up with all these tech upgrades. You have daggers, his claws, his suit, and then he also has these 5 cards called Wakanda Forever that activates all of those upgrades. So his energy daggers will deal AoE damage and it hits everybody. His claws deal the most damage at 2. His suit swaps damage, and his tactical genius removes threat. Whichever one of these upgrades activate last also gets powered up. So for example, if you activate his claws last, then they'll deal 4 damage instead of 2 damage. On top of all those upgrades, Black Panther's ability is reactive just like his suit, so they'll passively hit enemies back. If an enemy hits you for 2 damage, then they'll take 1 in response. T'Challa's ability also lets you search for upgrades so he can get them pretty quickly. He also has Vibranium, which is a double wild resource. Shuri is his only ally that will also help you search the deck as well. He also has this card called Ancestral Knowledge, which helps you recycle cards from your discard pile. And lastly, Golden City helps you with draw power. So if you exhaust this card, then it lets you draw 2 more cards. If you like tons of mobility in your deck, if you like having draw power, search power, bringing cards from the discard pile back into your deck, if you like being able to pay for them with a ton of resources, wild resources actually, since all that Vibranium's coming up, then Black Panther will be very fitting for you. Now onto our final hero, the one and only Iron Man. Now Iron Man is actually pretty similar to Black Panther in that he has a ton of different upgrades. Iron Man isn't strong at all in his first form, but with all of his upgrades, Iron Man packs a literal punch. He's all about building up his entire suit. He has a helmet that helps him remove threats, boots that give him more health and makes him fly, and that empowers the rest of his actions. He has 2 gauntlets that deal damage. His arc reactor actually lets you attack twice. And he also has his Mark 5 armor, which gives him 6 more health. With no upgrades, Iron Man only has 9 health. But with everything that goes into it, he has 17 health, and his hand limit also starts off at 1. But again, with all those upgrades, it then increases up to 7 cards with everything fully upgraded. Fittingly, you're going to be Tony Stark most of the time in the beginning to build up your armor sets, and then Iron Man to finish off your fights. As Tony, you get to search for your cards and also find your armor sets pretty quickly. Other than building up your armor, he also has Supersonic Punch, which deals 4 damage by itself, but with your boots, it will deal 8 damage, just like Spider-Man's Swinging Web Kick. And his Repulsor Blast also deals small damage at first, but then you mill the top 5 cards of your deck, and then it deals progressively more damage for each energy card that gets discarded. He has Pepper Potts and War Machine as allies. Pepper gives him more resources by reusing the discard pile, and War Machine helps clear the field of minions. If you like playing as engineering classes in like general games, if you like tinkering with different gadgets and kind of building up this little tiny sets of armor that eventually, progressively builds up to a much stronger set, then you are going to love Iron Man. Honestly, if you just like Iron Man in general, you will love playing as him. Tell me, how amped are you about this game after hearing about all of those heroes and their unique abilities and different playstyles? Now we're going to talk about our 3 villains and then wrap up with the final thoughts about this game. But just a quick spoiler alert, just in case you don't want to hear about the villains and kind of want to experience them on your own, then I would recommend skipping to my final thoughts. My final thoughts. Let's start first with Rhino. Rhino is a freaking monster. Do not, for 1 second, as you're reading through the tutorial, they're going to recommend you playing with Rhino and Spider-Man and Captain Marvel first. Do not think that because he is first, he is not difficult. Rhino he's a monster, like an actual monster. He is not easy to take down. It's hard to damage him because he also has minions that block him. Rhino also heals, he deals extra damage, he stuns you, and overall he is just a massive damage dealer. When playing against Rhino, it's all about trying to survive his attacks, his stuns, and damaging him as much and as quickly as possible before he gains too much momentum and then just powers up beyond control. You're also not the only one with allies. Villains have their own form of allies as well, called minions. Rhino, for instance, has Sandman, and he also has Shocker. Both of them add on to dealing even more damage, and Toughness. Toughness is like a guard to damage against first. You have to break the toughness in order to damage them directly. Rhino, though, is the easiest villain to face. Moving on to the next one, who is Claw, who plays very, very differently. Claw is more so interested in status effects. He may not do the high damage as Rhino, but it is difficult to hit Claw. He has lots of guards, he rips cards from your hand, he exhausts your heroes, and he also has Whirlwind and Tiger Shark on his side that have tons of health and damage. Whirlwind can hit you and all of your allies, and Tiger Shark is pretty much impenetrable, constantly regenerating his toughness. On top of that, Claw's damage is random because it is dependent on the boost cards that you draw, so you can never truly predict how much damage he's going to deal. It could be 0 to 1 damage one turn, and then all of a sudden the next turn he deals like 6 to 8 damage. One time he did that exact thing to me, and I was not ready for it, and of course, I died. Very unexpectedly. Claw's a very tough villain. He's very interestingly designed. Now moving on to our final villain, my favorite villain that I've faced so far, and that is Ultron. Ultron is by far the most difficult villain that I've faced from the core set, but if you read any of the comics, if you read like Age of Ultron, then you know how insane he is in there. So I'm glad that he translated over very, very well in Marvel Champions, because he is one heck of a threat to deal with. Ultron is extremely powerful. He summons drones every turn that kind of just nick you at first, and if you don't pay attention to them, they're going to overwhelm you in an instant because they can get upgraded and deal more and more damage. His entire deck actually is revolved around drones. He heals more with drones on the field. His advanced drone uses guard to protect him, but also summons more once you defeat the advanced drone. Ultron can upgrade himself with blasters to gain retaliate and dish damage back to you just like Black Panther does. He has vibranium armor, which blocks your damage every other turn. And his scheme eventually becomes a ticking time bomb. It gets to the point where you can't even remove threat from him at all, and you are forced to defeat him before time runs out. He's also using your own deck against you to create these drones. How fitting. I've already beaten Claw and Rhino, but Ultron, I've only managed to defeat him his first form, his second form. I can't even imagine currently a scenario where I can defeat his third form. By the time I even get to his third form, I'm already like 3/4 of the way dead. So yeah, he's crazy hard. Okay, final thoughts. Hands down, this game is so fun, it's amazing, it's so true to the comics. If you are a Marvel fan, you need to get this game. It's so good. I've only played it solo, but I can only imagine it getting better playing cooperatively. I love how thematic it is, which in turn makes it incredibly immersive. I really found myself lost in the game in a good way because I feel like I'm so connected to the characters. Like I'm dodging with SpiderMan and building up armor pieces with Iron Man. I'm reflecting damage as Black Panther and building up energy as Captain Marvel, and just like destroying the field with SheHulk. Clearly the designers of this game, Michael Boggs, Nate French, Caleb Grace, the whole Fantasy Flight team, they are very, very hardcore Marvel Comics fans, which is amazing because it shines through their game. Like think about this for a second. Let this sink in. They made you feel like a Marvel hero without miniatures, like just with cards. That is a feat. The replayability in this game is obviously there. When I told you that I was only supposed to play this game like 3 times-ish and ended up playing it 12 times all within like a day or two. I honestly was just so addicted to the gameplay. It was just such a good puzzle, but it was an ever-changing puzzle. It wasn't like the same static puzzle. It was dynamic, it was fluid. You're figuring out how to attack villains and remove their threats while also trying to heal your hero in their alter ego form. You're utilizing both forms. There's just so many factors that you have to consider while playing this game. That's why it just was really fun for me. There's this multi-dimensional gameplay, and that is what keeps me coming back to playing it, because at its core, everyone plays as they should. You know, Ultron summons crazy hordes of drones, Claw weaponizes attacks, Rhino hits like a truck, but every game is so different because the amount of cards interacting with each other. Boost cards giving variability to each game because you don't know how much each villain is going to do with their attack, and that also eliminates the need for dice and works so well. That's not even considering the hero deck yet, and then the hero deck on top of that is customizable. So you can start off by building off these 15 cards, and it's nice because the game gives you a standard to work with. And then you can add on up to 40 cards, well, your total card size. Your total card limit can be 40 to 50 cards. So there's some flexibility in there in terms of how you want to build out your deck. You can use SpiderMan to face Rhino with a Justice themed deck, and then once you beat him for level 2, then you can switch it out with a Protection themed deck. And then you can face Rhino with an Expert form. There's just so many different ways that you can play this game, which is awesome. Bottom line, I have raved about this game enough, or have I? But there are just so many hours that you can pour into this game. You will not regret this game if you are a Marvel fan. I'm sure you're gonna love this game. There are, however, 2 things that I can think of that I wished were improved in this game, or at least included in this game. First off is with the rulebook. It would have been very, very helpful to include sample round gameplay, like just one major example at least, at the very minimum. Preferably multiple examples, but going through this game to begin with, they throw a lot of terminology at you. I think the rulebook is great, it's organized, I think it's well done for the base game, but you will, guaranteed, you will have questions by the end of the rulebook as you're playing through it, because there are just a lot of different conditions that you have to address. So like every single game that I played, actually, I had to look up at least 2 to 3 questions. And I feel like a lot of that can be diminished if you include a sample round gameplay to show how the game is played. On top of that, when they throw all this terminology and rules at you, I think it's easier if they kind of guide you to play like right away versus here's all this information and then you can play afterwards. I think it'd be easier if they introduce a little bit of information and then kind of walk you through a guided tutorial. Kind of like how Jaws of the Lion or Valor and Villainy did in their tutorials, where they introduce a couple rule sets and then introduce some gameplay and then more rules and then more gameplay. That would have worked really, really well for this game. Secondly, the cards themselves, they're not bad. They're okay. I wished that they were either thicker and or have like the air cushions, because I really wanted a more premium feel to the cards, especially with all this amazing artwork and all of our heroes represented and the villains. Maybe even holofoil heroes or villains later on in the future. I'd be so down for that. But I just wish the cards were just upgraded. Arguably, you can say that, oh, well, they're gonna be sleeved anyway. Well, then you would have to buy the custom sleeve if you want to like make sure it's thematic to the game. The custom sleeves, if you end up getting enough sleeves for the hundreds of cards that are included in the base game and the ever-growing expansions, then that is gonna end up being worth more than the game itself. So I like the card sleeves. I actually have a set I haven't used yet, but I really would have liked more premium cards. I think it would have been nice. Last little tidbit, there is a mini expansion for Madame Hydra and also for MODOK included in the game that you can pair up with the different villains, Rhino Claw, Ultron. They aren't substantial. I honestly can just do without them. I'd actually prefer to have one substantial one versus 2 mini ones, but you know, they're there and they're included in the base game, so they're, you know, more hours of gameplay. That really is all I have to critique about the game. Honestly, it's not much, but here is the final rating that I have for Marvel Champions. I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 5. That is the highest I've ever given any board game that I've reviewed on my channel since I've introduced ratings, but this game is deservingly so. It is freaking amazing. In summary, it is extremely thematic. You get so immersed playing as your favorite heroes. Card interactions are very dynamic. It makes the game so replayable. It's inviting to play solo. You can just grab it off your shelf before bed. Setup is like 3 minutes, but then you can play a quick 30-minute game session. The deck customization is incredible. It's nice that the game gives you a standard, so each hero has 15 cards that you have to have, and then add the cards until you reach 40 or 50. You can then pick different attributes between aggression, protection, leadership, and justice to make each hero play very differently according to your own unique playstyle. The Yu-Gi-Oh fan in me loves this customization, and I love being able to build your own deck for this. And lastly, not too much of a downer, but it'd be really nice to have a sample gameplay example included in the rulebook, especially for new players, and also upgraded card material. Clearly not a make or break the game at all, but it just would have been a nice little addition, nice little nod to how, you know, amazing the artwork in the game is overall. I already have the Scarlet Witch expansion and the Doctor Strange expansion that I got ages ago. I'm super excited to dive into these now, along with, you know, some Iron Man card sleeves. Some nice matted Iron Man card sleeves as well, just like this one. If you have not tried this game, do yourself a favor and spark some joy and happiness like it has in me, and get Marvel Champions. I cannot recommend it enough. Especially as a Marvel fan, this game gives you so much fulfillment seeing your heroes given justice. Hope you all enjoyed this extensive video, this extensive review, and I will catch you all in the next video. See you later.